Hunter, Northwest Christian Catholic University, and he's going to talk about rethinking the spin.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, so when John asked me to come here and talk, I said, well, most of the stuff I work with in terms of periodization is pretty specific and high-end, so I said, you know, I think we'll talk about some rotational technique that can apply for shot put and discus. So go ahead and go to the next slide here. Should be a little bit of a bio about me. I was lucky. I was a D3 athlete, and I was lucky enough to go on and do some training afterwards, and I progressed beyond what I thought was possible, and it led me to some experiences that I'm very grateful for. Some of those are being ranked top in the world. I went to the Olympics. Right now, I am running Rodhe sport, and I'm fortunate enough to be at Capital University, which is in Columbus, Ohio. And we have a couple of professionals training there with my group, and we have a great coaching staff. One of them is here today, Sandy. Is Sandy in here right now? Yeah. Yeah, she's right there. Sandy's our Maltese and vault coach. She's very qualified. She's pretty much been there, done that, coached everything in track and field. So if you have any questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer any if you have anything beyond the events that we talked about today. Okay, next slide. Now, I want to talk about some new vocabulary, some definitions. In my travels and in my experience with trying to make track and field better, I find our vernacular, our diction is different across regions. If you talk with a coach and athlete in California and talk with a coach and athlete in New York, they're probably doing the same exercises, the same programs, but they call things different. They have different names for different exercises and different cues for the same movements in the circle. And then that becomes even more complicated if you talk with somebody overseas, somebody who's English second language, somebody from Germany or Poland, and they talk with one coach and another coach, and then it's all different. And so I think it'd be important for us to start adapting more universal and maybe some simpler cues that we can use within our community. That would make sharing knowledge much easier. So this first section is an attempt at that. We're going to talk about the body in the throw. Convention has had us be a lower body and an upper body, bottom half and a top half. I propose that we move to splitting the body down the center and only considering ourselves with a left side and a right side. So when we approach the rotational throw, you have a left side and a right side that you're working with forces, and we're not going to split the body and trying to create a separation. Okay, next. Zero support. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the circle. This is pretty basic. The back of the circle is where we start the throw, also 12 o'clock or 0 degrees, and the front would be where we finish the throw, and the opposites of 6 o'clock and 180. Technical elements, there's a zero support phase, which is where we have no contact with the ground. A lot of people would deem this a flight phase, or I propose we say zero. Next is a single support phase, where we have 1 foot in contact with the ground. There should be 2 for sure, and then half of a third single support phase in the throw, and then we have a double support phase, and there should be 2 of those in the throw as well. And so you can see with working with a single and double support why let's adopt zero support instead of a flight phase. It makes the coding a little simpler. Next. First step. Now, the first step we're going to talk about is where you move from the double support phase all the way to the first leg touchdown in the center. And we can just play this, I think, yeah. So it's from the wind up all the way to the touchdown. And that's the first step. And then second step is, I think, go to the next slide. First foot touchdown, you just slide this one, I think. From the point of first foot, from the first step touchdown, to the point of the second leg touching. So from here, from this point all the way to this point is the second step. And then I think on the next slide, patience and transfer. In recent years, there's been a key term has come up called specific strength. That came out of Canada with our training group. We actually have quite a few in the room right now. And, Ryan Jensen came up to Canada and trained with us there for a couple of years. A hammer thrower through 64 meters in the hammer. And of course, Dane, Sean has made a few trips up there. Specific strength is become a term a little bit, it's been kind of Jurassic Park to where people hear about it and they kind of know what it is, but there's not a lot of earned knowledge about it. This ties into that. Patience and transfer are some terms coming out in terms of the technical world right now. And I'm trying to lay out some definitions for us to start from. And patience would be when the body maintains movement without exerting force. This is particularly in your zero support phase and the second single support phase. You're holding your body in position while moving without creating any external force. And then transfer is the directing the kinetic energy of your body and the implement in order to maximize the distance thrown and minimize the strain on the body. Now, minimizing strain on the body, I think, is the key element to talking about transfer of force. And we're going to talk about catapult theory. With a typical catapult, we're looking at short range, high structural strain. The acceleration model is very, very quick, but it's very flat dynamic. It doesn't continually accelerate through the moment of release. And there's very little torque in this. And if anybody's familiar with these models, in Lord of the Rings in the final battle, one side has catapults, one has trebuchets. That's a pretty common reference to get the visual. This model, the catapult model, has a lot of structural strain. And if you're taking thousands and thousands of throws a year, you're going to get really beat up throwing like this. And this would be subject to making a very hard block stop at the front of the circuit. You're breaking the body, creating this huge force inside, and trying to launch the implement beyond that. I think it's better to throw with a trebuchet model, which is really what we're talking about in terms of this transfer of force. It has a longer range. There's very, very low structural strain in this model, and there's a longer acceleration path, so that the top end amount of force produced is higher, and you get a higher range of torque out of it. Now, what these models propose is that in the final of your throw, we're looking to continually move through our finish, not a hard stop. Okay, and we'll see this as we go through some of our video models. Okay. Oh wait, go back to that. A good visual for this is tip these on their sides and pretend like that arm is your arm. That gives a better visual representation for how we want to move these models. Okay, you tip these on their sides. Okay. The entry. Something that we want to be looking at with the entry of our rotation is making a wide path around our this is a left-handed thrower, so we're moving it around our right side. And the entry is considered from this point all the way to the first step touchdown. Next. The middle. Yeah, we just play this one through again. The middle is from the first step all the way to double support touchdown again. So we're combining all of our singles and double supports now into whole sections of the throw. And then final concerns, once you obtain the second double support phase, all the way through the moment of release. Yeah, and then with the final, I don't instruct on a reverse. For me, the final of the throw is a double support push all the way until the implement leaves your body, and then after that, it's up to the athlete to figure out what to do. I think we probably are coaching our reverses too early to our athletes, and we're not pushing the ball long enough. Okay. So you slide through it. Yeah, you can just continue to play this, Sean. Now, 3 ideas critical to rotational training is we're looking for a fast entry, and that's not to be confused with time. Okay. If you, I have Bobby Grace up here as an example because he does a really good job of moving wide around his outside point. When we say fast entry, we want to be moving in terms of, we want to be moving our body fast, but not in a short path. So be cautious with our entries. A lot of times athletes can fall into the center around that side, and it takes less time to get to the center, but we're not moving fast to that point. Quick second double support phase. Now this we want to achieve double support touchdown at the front of the circle as soon as possible. I think Bobby is a little late in this model here. Sorry? Yeah, no, it's all right. I'm just going to run through these. And then for our finish, we want to have a very long strike, very grounded finish, and pushing flat straight out. Typically, convention has taught us to push straight up through the final. We want to be working a little more out. Okay, with the Bobby Grace model, we're looking at the entry. Now, one main element of our entry is we see Bobby is moving really far around his side. Now, for a right-handed model, a really good example of how to work this is if you think about moving your body with the left and the right side. For a proper entry, you want to move the right side of your body around a posted left side of your body. And that looks, you keep this still like a door hinge, and you have to push the right side around to the point where you end up getting almost a mirror image of yourself as you're facing. First step, we're looking at and we want to see an open shoulder model coming on the entry. Just slide this one. We want to see an open shoulder, torso slightly leaned in with the chest high. And then we're looking for the mirror image of ourselves. You see this point here, and then come out to here, right there. We're trying to move the body along the one line to reflect itself on that entry point. And then as we come into the center, we want to have the first step, foot, hip, shoulder, and implement, all entering that first step all together at the same time. And then we want our feet to travel as close to the ground as possible in this rotation. Okay, what's the next example? Is there one of for the second step? The key element of the second step is we want to move into a heel strike. A lot of times in our finish, I see a lot of young athletes, we're always on our toes. And the problem with being on your toes is when you get to the finish of the throw, these are heavy implements, and they're going to push against you. And if you're on your toes, you've now opened up a whole other hinge point. That ankle becomes another hinge point in your body. So when you go to push against these balls, you got the hinge point is in your knee and in your ankle. And if you put your ankle on the ground, you've eliminated one hinge point, so you only have one to deal with. This gives you a much more stable and a much stronger position to push against the implement. I've got lots of video. I wasn't able, we had some technical difficulties today, but I've got some video of athletes, they come down, they hit the toe at the front, and they go to push, and in the moment of release, their heel gets pushed into the ground because they're not strong enough, and that ball's pushing against them, and they lose it, and that's energy that the ball's putting back into you. Well, I ask athletes to do a heel strike. As they're coming down, put your heel on the ground, and it's a heel strike into a flat foot. Like you're going to put your foot flat on the ground, but most of the weight on the heel. Another reason that I like to teach this is when you do a heel strike, it automatically when you go for the toe, you can reach, and I can put my toe down anywhere I want. It's I have no accuracy with that. But if I push my hip through the heel, my foot's going to go to the same place every single time, and that's going to really help to increase the accuracy of your athletes in the finish of their throw. The other thing is when you push that heel into the ground, it opens up the hip and it pulls the left side open automatically, and so it's going to create a much faster, much more dynamic final for your athletes. Once you hit this heel strike, it's important. We talk about the catapults. It's very easy to put that heel down and stop the body and try and propel the implement away from you. But we want to keep moving. Once that leg comes down, keep the left side moving around and move like a trebuchet in constant movement instead of stopping.
You also heel strike in the discus?
Yep. Yep. That heel strike's probably even more important in the discus because there's no toe board, so you need to ground yourself even more. If you watch all of the world greats, they all have a flat front foot. Harding, Malachowski, Cantor, he can go half and half on it. Okay, bring us back to some of the later video examples. Right here, that one back there. There we go. Okay, let's slide us through this one here. Now this is not to pick on one of my athletes, but we're going to talk about what some of these mistakes look like. So go back to the entry. We talked about pushing the right around the left and having that left be at 90 degrees. Left's at 90, and the foot's still on the. When the foot comes off the ground, she's past 90 here. And then also you can see where she throws her left side all the way in the circle, and she leaves that right side way behind her. And then that causes her to be late bringing her left down at the front, and come back and show the non-heel strike. You'll see her come down, she comes down to her foot, or down to her toe only, and she never gets the heel on the ground. The other thing that not getting the heel on the ground causes is you're on your toe, and so there's tension in that foot. And when there's tension, our body likes to release it, and it's going to make you more apt to jumping. That's for the final though. Let's see what else from here. Oh, also, I believe in this we'll see her. She stops her left side moving and only tries to move her right side. And you see her whole body contort and twist up and away from the throw, and that would be more like a catapult model. Final of the throw. Now this is the real meat and potatoes for everything that we're talking about in terms of pushing sides, flat around, comes into the final phases. The models on the left here are me straight out of college. and the others are in the Olympic year after I trained a few years professionally. Key examples you see here, this is a hard block, stop, catapult type throw. This I'm posted but continually moving around the left side. That's more of a trebuchet type model. And then this is the side angles of those same elements. You see some of the clear examples are bent knees versus straight knees. We want to have bent knees with flat feet on the ground. We're looking, ideally you want to have your chest level with your hips or forward of your hips. There's a big difference between these two. And then, okay, hand injuries and vertical displacement. This is the main point I can make about rotational throwing, glide throwing too. But when you get to the front, if you're posted up, you're ready to accelerate, you're at maximum speed, then that ball, it comes off your neck, and now you only have contact with your fingertips. At best, half your hand is on that ball. You have no more control over the ball at that point. No more control. You're posted up, you're ready to push at maximum effort, and if you change the vertical displacement of your body, up or down, you're going to now change the point at which your body is centered on that mass, and you're going to miss the ball. It's going to slide, you're going to split your fingers, it's going to roll off your hand. This is where hand injuries come from, and we call this jumping. You come to the front and you reposition and you prepare to throw and you push and lift through the shot. You're changing the vertical displacement of your body, and you're going to thus change the angle and center of mass of that shot on your hand. I think, do any of our senior throwers in here want to give an experience or anything that you want to share about? Maybe, yeah, breaking your fingers, and then maybe, I don't know.
I've done it a lot before. I think most people have bent backs and stuff, you know. I was actually just looking at my hand because it's kind of swollen. What do you guys call it? The palm? Okay. That was called the palm?
I wrote that story about the palm.
Yeah.
So it's just like the idea of just your hand being really full. I mean, I don't throw the men's weights, but I do have actually Rodhe's glove that I use. Actually, I'll pull it up for you. But I use this glove, and I've done my special strength with 16-pound shots with 18-pound shots, and it's really helped kind of keep my hands together.
Now, I think at one point, probably all of us have thrown with a vertical attitude, almost a jump, and I think most of the senior throwers here have switched to a more flat release. You guys want to share anything about that? Or
last year I threw with the glove quite a bit, and I had a lot of difficulties adjusting to it because it's only for these 3 fingers. So when I threw, I jumped a lot, and that changed it. And it took it was like an aha moment, because I attended his clinic in December last year, and I worked through it all the way through May, and really when I put that glove on, things started to click.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you can pass it around if you want. There's a table with that stuff out there. Yeah, the short history on the glove is I incurred a very serious hand injury. I had to throw with a glove protected for 9 months, and I had to take 9 weeks off, and then by the time I came back, I had to throw the 4K at 50% for like 5 weeks. Like, that's how bad my hand injury was. And it's from jumping to the finish. And in the discus, if you jump to the finish, you're going to see the discus is going to go up and come down. It's going to be like a slope shape instead of a nice even flake. And that's a real good indication for the discus throwers. Is if the discus is going and straight down, you're getting a jump in the final, and you're not maximizing the velocity and trajectory of your implement. With this proposed, using our sides to move the throw, I think, particularly at our low levels, as coaches, it's very easy to give our athletes cues to try and help them throw 4 inches further, 8 inches further, even if they're a little bit on the weak side. The technical model that we present here right now is, it takes a very strong athlete. It takes a lot of core strength, a lot of development. And I think it's very easy to take a young athlete and say, okay, well just swing this leg a little faster, or make this little change to get a little increase, but I think we're hurting our athletes in the long run. So I think it's more important to give them a functional, these movements are very, very hard to do for young athletes, or even if you've never done them before. It's very, very hard to push your body if you've never done it before. So I think it's really important to have our athletes doing the basics early on, and don't make little individual changes. Force athletes to work through their technique. Now, to help build up the strength of your athletes so they can work through these positions, this is my professional athlete, Taryn Suddy. She was a Canadian champion last year. She throws 1761 as her best. It's about 57, 58 feet, I think. We just finished this in her conditioning cycle. That she's holding an 18-pound shot here. These hurdles are set on the lowest setting. This is a very, very hard drill to do. She makes it look very easy. You can go to the next one now. The one straight on. The first time she did this, she was hitting every single hurdle and flying and going side to side through here. And I think it forces you to accelerate the side of your body, because if you pick your leg up and put it down, you're not going to get your other side back through the hurdles. So this is great for teaching athletes to push each side of the body independent of the other while maintaining balance. We'll play that another time. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now this I would call a heavy stand throw. This is really good for getting our athletes to accelerate the release side of their body over their front. Usually for young athletes, we're probably looking at a 5-pound dumbbell maybe, something fairly light. I think this was a 35-pound ball here. Sean was the one that took this video. And here we're looking at flat front foot, bent knee, and we're continually moving our shoulders through the release. All the things, we're trying to move like a trebuchet, eliminate the stress on the body. Okay. And then the half spin. Now let's take this to the last page of notes here. Yeah, this is Christian Cantwell. This is from his pre-world camp from this last year. I have the half spin in here. I think this is better than the South African in terms of an exercise. Okay. On the last page of notes, I've broken out the variations of the stand throw. I found that, and part of this is out of Anatoly Bondarchuk's research in terms of correlation coefficients for how much one exercise improves your competitive event. So based on the percentages of what the stand, half, south all benefit the full throw, the half spin and South African are considered exercises at best. We would consider these specific strength exercises because in the spin, when you do a full throw, you have so much more stored energy that you can never replicate it from going from the south to the half spin. So in my training model, stand throws we'll use, depending on the athlete. Some athletes respond well to the stands and some don't. The half spins and South Africans are only exercises. And I don't train breakdown of progression. A lot of times in a practice or a competition warm-up, rotational athletes will do a few stands, do a few halves, a few souths, and now go to fulls. I think this is detrimental because it's a different feeling than the half and the south. And so I would say for our athletes, let's go with stand throws and straight into full throws for practices and competitions, and use half spins and South Africans as exercises. Now, a key example of why the half spin, how to use it as an exercise, let's slow this down and take it through. I'm going to talk about using low feet, feet pretty close low to the ground, and doing rotational sweeps with our legs. when you start the half spin, you have no stored energy, so you have to actively move. In this example here, Christian has to actively move his left side of his body around the right side of his body. You know, you talked about Dane with the throw. He said you move the right side around the left, and once you're in center, you move the left side around the right, and then the final, you move the right around the left again. So this is where the half spin is an excellent exercise for teaching athletes to move the back side of their body around the front side in the middle. This is really, really hard. A lot of our developing athletes, they lack the core strength to move the separate sides of their bodies. Well, if you set the athlete down and say, okay, move it, it's really, really hard at first. And they have to learn how to shift those sides of their bodies around themselves. So that's where I'd say this is an exercise. It's not a progression off of their competitive throw. Yeah, I think that's the last slide. So, stand throws, diminished returns when compared to glide shot putters. Glide shot putters, stand throws are very, very important for our rotational shot and disc people. It depends on the athlete. You have to make that call. Half spins as an exercise, a specific strength exercise, best used with heavy implements. If the athlete carries a heavy implement, it reinforces the fact that they accelerate the body even more. South African throws, these are, if you have an athlete touching down the middle and they're getting stuck and bogged down, South African is really good for teaching them how to get through that. Again, using it as an exercise to teach elements, not as a breakdown of the full throw. That can be used with light or heavy implements. I would probably mostly use the South African with a light implement. And then the full spin throw, it's the only way to replicate the competitive movement. There's nothing else you can do to actually train the elements of the full throw unless you do the full throw. And those can be used with light or heavy implements again. Yeah, that's it for the notes. Questions?
Was the trebuchet catapult model, is that apply the same for a glide athlete?
Yeah, I would say that depends a lot on the strength of your thrower. The problem that we have right now is a lot of our really good technical models in the glide are the world elite men and the world elite women. The problem is that the women throw a ball so light that they can get away with technical flaws. So if you look at elite women in the disc hammer and shot, at the elite level, they can cheat to make that implement go further because it's so light for them. So it's really hard to find good models for women. You have to look at the lower levels. And then for the men, they're so strong and they end up having so many surgeries after so many years that I'm hesitant to say that that's a really good model for us to use. Applying the trebuchet model for the glide would be in the shoulder action, not so much in the hips and the legs. Yeah.
The final's the same.
Yeah, the final's the same.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Do you think about like fast switch or just switch with like glide or shot? You know, some of those stronger kids that aren't real quick, more gliders or.
Yeah.
Because I've taken like little heads and made really good spinners.
Right.
And like they're beating those big girls that are gliding. You know?
Yeah. I think the ability of the athlete to glide or spin is not so much directly correlated to whether they're fast or slow, but more their proprioception. And I say that if they're a slow twitch athlete, I'm just going to have them shorten their glide, or maybe have a modified version of their spin technique if they're a slow twitch.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Justin.